Hello and welcome to the F1 Journal podcast. This is brand new to us all. We're super excited to get this going. It's been a long time in the pipeline. First of all, I've got to welcome the absolute guests alongside me. We've got Glenn and we've got Annie to discuss the weekend's action, to debrief the first race of the season. How are we, guys?
Good, thank you.
Annie. Yeah, all good, thank you, mate. Glad we're finally here, getting this thing going.
Absolutely. We've got so much to discuss. We've got the Australian Grand Prix, just a small matter of that, and the small incidents that occurred. We had 6 rookies. Quite a few making the debuts, 3 out of the 6 making the race debuts. We've had drama with McLaren, with Mercedes, all sorts, and obviously the small matter of Lewis Hamilton making his debut at Ferrari. We might even touch on F2 and F3 later on if we have time. But first of all, let's dissect the Formula One event. First of all, happy St. Patrick's Day to any Island audience members, specifically Alex Dunn, because we'll know he'll be watching. But yeah, let's debrief Melbourne. So, main takeaways. What are we saying? Go on, Annie, you go first.
How much are McLaren going to win every race by?
Yeah, I mean, they were mind-blowingly quick. Norris took the victory, as I'm sure you know by now. Norris took the win. Oscar Piastri finishing down in 9th. That's not how the race was really planning out. I mean, it's a small incident of him spinning almost in like slow motion off onto the grass, trying to get his car going again. I think it actually showed really good pace, the fact that he was able to pull himself back from adversity to get himself back into the points. I mean, those 2 points may not seem a lot right now, but they could do come the end of the season. For example, if he finds himself in a championship fight, or even McLaren are in a tight teams fight.
I saw a funny, he's been like posting with Jeremy Clarkson on social media because I guess he went to Clarkson's farm to do some reversing late last year, reversing a tractor or something, and now he's like, oh, that helped me with the in the Grand Prix.
Oh, go on, Glenn. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I think whether it's that helped him get out of that situation, but the determination from him, I think that alone is worthy of all sorts of praise, because when you get yourself in a position like that and you think everything's done, it's too easy just to take the gloves off, throw the steering wheel down and call it a day. But he didn't let that get the better of him, and he still ended up in the points. So, yeah, massively commendable. And it just shows what sort of driver he is and what's going to come of him, even just this year.
He did a pretty insane overtake on Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages.
Yes, yeah, that was round a corner of, was it turn 12?
I think it's turn 9. I think it used to be turn 12, but they chopped a few corners off, didn't they? And just sort of went, oh, we don't need you anymore.
So yeah, to go round the outsides on the wet without the grip that Hamilton had and still pull it off, fantastic, absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely. I should probably run through the actual race result because people are probably wondering what on earth happened. So it was Lando Norris who took the victory from Max Verstappen, who definitely put the pressure on towards the end. It was a fantastic effort from a Red Bull car that definitely had a mixed afternoon. We'll talk about Liam Lawson later on. George Russell in third for Mercedes. What a drive from Kimi Antonelli. It was Albon, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Leclerc, Piastri and Hamilton which rounded off the points. There was only 14 finishers. So a lot more DNFs than we're used to seeing, certainly in recent times. for any standard Grand Prix, we usually get 1 or 2 if we're lucky, but we had 6 non-finishers. I mean, it was a great qualifying. 19 drivers set a time. Oliver Behrman, well, I think Oliver Behrman did set a time, but he was massively hampered by his practice moments where it just wasn't what he needed at all. Liam Lawson knocked out in Q1, as was Kimi Antonelli. Not the best debut qualifying for him. But I guess the main takeaway is the field is so close. We had 7 teams inside the top 10, which for the start of the season is not bad going at all.
No, it was pretty, and there was 2 Williams in there too. I think it was
Yes. Yes,
there
it
was like
Albon in 6th and Sainz in 10th.
Yeah, there was only like 2 Williams, 2 Ferraris, but only like 1 Mercedes, 1 Red Bull, obviously 2 McLaren. So it was pretty spread out with teams. Gasly was in there too.
Yeah, it wasn't the best in terms of race pace for Alpine. Gasly finished outside the points and doing obviously had that little mishap. Not the way he wanted to have his home race, and certainly not what he needs at the moment. The rumour mill ramping up about the 5-race magical contract he's got. Franco Colapinto waiting in the wings with that saga at Alpine. Yeah, Piastri didn't have an ideal Sunday. Had a good qualifying though. Had it taken away though from Lando Norris. So Lando Norris, that drive was exceptional. Martin Brundle called it one of the best he's seen in wet weather conditions. Now, I don't have to go back too long to remember a drive that I thought was a little bit better than that, but it was still amazing. And I think that Lando, he's had a lot of doubters, certainly over his career, certainly last season. What a way to start the year for him.
Yeah, to have for the better part of the race, his teammate hot on his heels for the most of it, and not far behind a very eager Verstappen, which you always got to worry because any slight mistake, he's gonna. I think they said it in the punditry, he will punish you for any little mistake. But I think the way that Piastri was closing down on him, I think it was a bit unfair of the team to call team orders at that point to say hold position, because that's when he then made a mistake. He ran off into the gravel. He dropped back a lot more than what he would have potentially actually got out of that. And even though they're saying it was for wait until once it dries out, or once we've done a pit stop, whatever the excuse was, I think it was just hurtful to his race, because it was just like it was just a bug in his head at that point where it affected the next few corners and then ultimately his race.
Yeah,
there was some back markers in there that they like. I think Lawson was in the middle of them and another car, and they wanted to try and get out of the way of those first. But still,
absolutely. There was a lot of back markers there. I think the Haas team have probably had a opening weekend to forget. Because, as you say, the team order, it's a very weird one. I'm not going to assume this, but I'd pretty much assume that if it happened the other way around, Piastri's leading the British Grand Prix, quick radio message to Lando Norris. Lando, listen, we know it's your own race, but can you just please hold position for us? I'm not sure that's going to go down too well with the Silverstone crowd, as boisterous as they are. And I'm sure it probably would not go down too well with the Lando fan base either. So it is a really weird one. But I suppose McLaren are going to make these decisions in the moment. They've probably seen the likes of Hadjar doing, and the sights already go out, the conditions to come later on. Do they really need anything to potentially inflict the race and, weaken the chances of victory? Probably not. I mean, at that moment in time, it was a potential easy 1-2 in the bag. They needed the rain to come later on, but I think the only thing probably Ferrari got right throughout the entire race was the Class 3 rain, whatever they were on about with the classes of rain, but they certainly called it. around that time. It's just a shame probably for them that they didn't call in the pit stops probably when they needed to. I mean, because 8th and 10th for a team that you could have said in pre-season, everybody in pre-season was touting the two to be in a championship fight. I mean, we're only one racing out of 24, that could still happen, but yeah, really weird one for Ferrari.
I read somewhere that they compromised their quali to set up their cars for a completely wet race, which, I mean, whether true or not, seems a bit interesting.
I'm not sure it exactly worked, whatever setup they were going for. They didn't really have any sort of pace. I mean, it was only really a small stint where actually dry tyres were used. It was mainly intermediate throughout. Hamilton was struggling to get past Albon throughout the entire race. Leclerc, up until the wet, wasn't really have any sort of impact on. I think it was Tsunoda and Russell that were up there at the time. So really, really weird stuff for Ferrari.
Yeah, and then Antonelli just passed Albon basically straight away in the closing stages of the race.
Absolutely. What a debut. What a debut. I mean, I'll let you go, Glenn, about this, but what a debut from Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, great for Mercedes, both for Russell and Antonelli. But for Antonelli being just over 18, to be the rookie, if you want to call him that, because it's his debut race, to be fourth in his debut race, I think is just wild, absolutely wild. He's clearly going to be very, very strong this year. Hopefully George is able to sort of coach him in ways that he's going to need with the Mercedes. But I mean, even through testing last year, Toto turned around and said, "We're just trying to slow him down," didn't he?
He went into the wall in a free practice one when he was doing a rookie session.
Yeah, he did in Monza last year. For the last place he would have wanted to do that in front of his home crowd. Because goodness me,
they said before he crashed, he was pushing further margins and quicker than anyone else on track in that session.
Utterly fearless. Must be utterly fearless. I mean, a lot of people are clearly already hyping him up to be one of the greats for the future, which clearly what he's showing so far he will be. But you look at Max Verstappen, he was only 6 months younger or something like that, not much younger than what Antonelli is now. And he's got a long future ahead of him the way he's driving.
I don't know who it was that said it, but it's like every generation, there'll be one driver that comes through that is like that generation's great almost. And it's interesting because all of a sudden Hamilton, to be fair, Hamilton wasn't even fully in the middle of his championship success when Max came onto the grid. But you just sort of think that actually the way Antonelli started, Max obviously rumoured he doesn't want to stay in Formula One forever. I mean, it's a very big team to jump in at. It's a very big fish in a very sort of high expectation pond, if you will, because he's got so much pressure on his shoulders because people have associated with potentially being the only second F1 Italian world champion, which, consider the amount that Ferrari have won, that's a crazy start. But as you say, he was only one place behind Russell. His pace, actually, when you think about it, was probably not too far off Lando's and McLaren, because as the rate he was catching up, and certainly, Norris was there to begin with. Antonelli's had to make his way through the field. You can say, well, it's a bit of a poor qualifying, but I think there was some sort of damage with his car. There was a lot of sparks flying off.
Yeah, he had floor damage.
Yeah,
he hit a curb, or I think he hit a curb and damaged something on the bottom of his car.
Yeah, I think it was that at turn 6. that's caught a lot of drivers out this weekend. Fernando Alonso, in particular, has voiced his concerns about that corner. I mean, it kicked up a lot of gravel, so much so they actually brought the red flag out for it. That was a free practice, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah,
There are a few standouts there in the points. Aston Martin did actually score some points. Lance Stroll there in 6th. Nico Hülkenberg in 7th for Sauber. They went 23 rounds without a point last year at the start of the season, and then all of a sudden they get one in the very first round of the year.
Well, didn't he scored more in Australia than they did the whole of the last season?
Yeah, if I'm right in thinking, just checking my notes here, they got 6 points, so it is more than what they got last year. I mean, it's a very strong lineup they've got there between Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. A good dynamic. They've got experience with young, sort of the thing I guess Mercedes are sort of looking at in the sense that they've got George Russell's been here since 2019, so he's got a bit of experience on his side, and then you've obviously got the young rookie in Bortoleto.
Yeah, I don't think his qualifying was in Q1. He just made it into Q2 by like nothing. That was a good last, like the final lap he ran in Q1 was with the pressure on.
I mean, he outqualified Hülkenberg, so he outqualified Hülkenberg. I mean, that's not bad of a debut quali at all. I mean, Hülkenberg would not have enjoyed that one bit. Qualifying's his thing. You know, he got a pole position in his rookie season. I'm not sure whether it'll happen with Bortoleto or not, but you never know the way this season looks to be planning out. I mean, we've got Sauber on more points than Ferrari. We've got we've got Stroll getting 8 points. He's got more points combined than I think Leclerc, Piastri, and Hamilton after round 1. So you never know. Maybe Fernando Alonso's right. Maybe there's world champion material in there after all. We'll have to wait and see with that one. But
he gets that Adrian Newey car.
Absolutely. I'm gonna leave people to debate that one. Who listen to this? Can Stroll become world champion? You'll never quite know. I mean, Jacques Villeneuve's career after he became world champion was nothing special. So you never know. Drivers could just have that one season. Both Canadian too, by the way. So game on. There was one rookie who didn't actually see the lights. We did see the lights, but they were under the formation lights, and that is Isaac Hadjar, who was visibly distraught, unexpectedly so. Probably his 2 last races, Isaac Hadjar, have probably been the 2 worst of his career. Obviously, the F2 finale where he stalled on the grid and handed the championship to Bortoleto, and crashing on the formation lap. I mean, it's a tough one to take. He's going to have good mental stability to turn this round for China.
I thought it was a bit unfair of how long they kept I guess there was nothing else happening, but they followed him like the whole way back in, like from his car all the way. You could see he was, I don't know, something. They could have found something else to show on the stream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only nice thing that you did see out of that is Anthony Hamilton consoling him, giving him some words of encouragement, because to Formula One, so he is now one of the best drivers in the world, if you want to put it in that respect. So again, at such a young age, you're going to make mistakes. You can't take it too much to heart. And what we can to try to start, just like Antonelli, you're coming into a season which is going to be incredibly tough, but then to have the weather thrown at you like it was, your mind's going to be everywhere. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think, what did he do? He lit up his tyres just as he touched the white line, which I think that was the cause of his spin, no?
Yeah, Brundle certainly highlighted that in commentary. It was certainly he thought it was the reason, and I see where you're coming from because it's often a thing, isn't it? When it's white, don't touch the white lines because it'll just throw you off, and it did.
And it's the same like Duhan and Carlos did exactly the same thing on the next lap, like on the first lap of the race.
I mean, if anything, I think it actually just shows the fact that, you know, as much as we want these racing drivers to be flawless and them to have absolutely no mistakes in them, they will do. Because, I mean, that's the natural sort of development. I mean, for Doohan and Hadjar, that's the first they've really had any sort of, I suppose, test, if you will, because that Doohan race in Abu Dhabi, as much as his car, it was sort of like Qatar, where they put all the eggs in one basket with Gasly towards the end of 24 Alpine. And that car of Ocon's wasn't really, if anything. So realistically, for doing that was basically like him driving his last FT race, really, compared to sort of how difficult that car was, in a sense. And you know, those drivers would have never driven anything like that before. Hadjar's got great race pace. He's proven that in his career so far in his junior categories. Like he won a lot of FT races last year, a lot more than Bortoletto.
He looked good in quali too.
Yeah, I mean he is quick, and I think it's just a shame we didn't really get to see that of him because, I mean, he's not been helped either by Dr. Helmut Marko calling it embarrassing. I mean, just for the record, these drivers start out in karting, no doubt, age 5 or 6 years old. They, though they, their families put absolutely everything into it to make it work for them. The amount of sort of effort and time and, you know, an effort they put into it, it is an emotional sport. You can't spend that long on something. I'm gonna guess Hadjar's roughly about 20 now, so he's had probably a good, like, you know, decade and a half at this, in sort of, you know, preparing himself, getting himself into it, and then becoming one of the, as you said, Glenn, one of the best drivers in the world. So it's a shame, really, that you've got Helmut Marko, the leader of Red Bull, coming out with that after that moment. I know Dr. Helmut Marko has never had compassion, but it would be nice to see it.
I mean, if I'd love to say I'd put myself in his position, Hadjar's position. I'd use that as fire. I'd use that as fuel now. Like Bortoletto said it as well, didn't he? He's gonna make him regret what he said.
Yeah, because he called him a B-class driver.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely he should be using that as not negative. He needs to be using it as a positive to show him what he can do. I mean, you look like he qualified 11th in front of Alonso, someone who's been doing this for a very, very long time. Stroll, been in the car since what, 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got who else in there? Hulkenberg, Lawson, who's really been in a Formula One car, Ocon as well. So to be able to be halfway through the pack on your first qualifying, great job.
Absolutely. Just looking at my notes there, actually, to just read off the same hymn sheet as you, though, about the people who's out qualified. I mean, when you look at Liam Lawson, now I'm not saying like for heavy criticism on Lawson or anything, because drivers can sort of have those races where they're absolutely nowhere. But if you're looking at the Red Bull family there and you're thinking of one driver to maybe pin criticism on, maybe it's the guy that qualified 15 places lower than his teammate. I know his teammate's Max Verstappen, but Sergio Perez got fired for something very similar. And you're blaming the guy in the junior category making his F1 debut. It's Lawson's closer to being in a second season driver than he is a rookie, which is a really sort of big thing, really. I know you can say, well, it's only 11 races and he's never raced at Melbourne before, but is that excuse going to come in next week when he's racing in China? As far as I'm aware, apart from when he was racing in like his Formula 4s, like the Asian Formula 4s and stuff, I can't really think of a time when he would have done it. So I think it's a very, very weird sort of thing to focus on Hadjar and to call Bortoletto B-class driver when he's beaten a lot of your junior drivers in F2 and F3 in the past 2 seasons, and comfortably as well. It's not been sort of like in his F3 season, nobody could get near him. F2, yeah, okay, fair enough. Hadjar kind of handed it to on a plate, but at the same time, he put himself in that position to be half a point ahead going into the final weekend. So, yeah.
What do you think of that Red Bull car, though? Like, have they made it so much? It seems like no one can even, except like Perez, I guess 2023 when he was quite close, but no other pairing. They've put 3 people in now. No one even comes close to anywhere near Max.
I think it's a driving dynamic, probably. I think it's got to be something sort of where you look at it and go, okay, it's certainly a setup thing. But again, like when you look at Gasly when he's left, I think Gasly got thrown in far too soon. When he got thrown in, he had a season and a couple of races at Toro Rosso, and then he got lobbed into a Red Bull car. And then was out by Spa. Then Albon gets a season and a half. Perez is the only real one that's had any sort of stability. I think that's because actually how good he was at helping Max. And I think that's sort of a thing that could help Max a lot this season, really, in a sense. He's not got a teammate that's expected to take points off him. You look at Ferrari, Leclerc and Hamilton are bound to take points off one another. McLaren the same, as they have done last season. And Mercedes, you look at, yes, Antonelli's not expected to take so many points off Russell. But after that debut where he finishes 4th, you can't exactly, I don't know, cancel him out just yet. I mean, there's been more unexpected things that I've seen in Formula One, certainly in the past 12 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very mixed weekend for a lot of drivers. I mean, especially as well, quite a lot of the youth and Fernando Alonso as well retiring. Although he probably will class himself as still youthful enough, if I'm still capable, I'm young enough. Yeah, it's a weird one for Fernando. Not a good day for the Spanish drivers. Sights out as well. But I think we should potentially move on then to just quickly talk about F2 and F3 because they were back this weekend. F2 and F3 return F3 for the first time racing action since September, which is it's far too long.
In between.
Absolutely. F2 only had 1 race this weekend. Well, it's supposed to have 2. The wet weather kind of said no to that one. I mean, there's been all sorts of drama about F2 this weekend. Drivers having penalties before the first free practice session. Actually, as well, teams have been hampered with testing as well that's coming up at the end of the month. Basically, they broke technical regulations during testing. It was the 2 Rodin cars, 2 Trident cars, and 2 Dan's cars. So Christian Mansell participated in testing. I read the feeder series sort of X thread where they basically talked through it. And I read it as if Amri Cordial's been handed a $10,000 or euros fine for the infringement, which had absolutely nothing to do with Amri Cordial. He was not. I'm not sure if that's right, but I did read it on there. Apparently, $10,000 fine for not even competing in the preseason testing, but the team's fault. It's got to be surely for the teams, the fine. It cannot be for the drivers. There's absolutely no way you're going to fine a driver 10 grand for not even turning a steering wheel. But yeah, I think
it's a lot of penalty, like a lot of teams to get the same thing wrong at testing. Like if sometimes one car or one team, but to have 3 different teams.
Yeah, absolutely. The drama of F2
Yeah.
is something that, it definitely produces, not to that level we're used to before FP1 or FP. But yeah, they had a 10-place group penalty for each race. The feature race penalties were pretty much pointless. Not the way Alex Dunn would want Max Estes or even Sammy Megatuniff would want to start their F2 journeys. Well, I think it's important to go through the results. Joshua Dirksen leads the championship. There's been a lot of sort of, I guess, debate on social media whether the 8 car's totally legal. As far as I'm concerned, and I see actual proper evidence in front of me to suggest it, I think it's unfair to belittle a driver's achievements. But it was Dirksen who took the sprint race victory ahead of Ford Rowley and Luke Browning, first F2 podium for the Brit. Could be potentially eyeing a reserve seat at Williams. Now Franco Colapinto's packed his bags and moved across to Alpine. And obviously Zach O'Sullivan no longer part of the academy, which is quite sad as well, the way it ended for him. Victor Martins took the pole. Only 9 drivers actually have points on the board, which is quite interesting, really, when you actually look at the championship standings and go, oh, well, there was the weekend of action, but only 9 drivers on the points board. A really weird dynamic. F3 was back as well. The brand new era of Formula 3, that is, with the new cars and everything. Santiago Ramos victorious in the sprint race for Mexico. First ever time they have won a Formula 3 race, certainly in the modern era. Rafa Kamara, though, reigning FRECA champion, which is the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, but I've always called it FRECA. It's also a lot easier to write articles than typing out a 6-word series each time. He took pole, took the feature race win, took fastest lap. He actually technically did a Grand Slam, a bit like Lando Norris. So, there's that. Anyway, without any further ado, final thoughts for everybody the weekend. Give me your driver of the weekend and the standout performer.
I've got to go Antonelli. Yeah, I don't think you can beat a performance like that on a debut and come fourth. Absolutely, hands down, driver of the weekend, maybe even driver of the year for that.
Go on, Annie, what about you?
I agree. Like, to have that much pressure going into a Grand Prix, like everyone said, oh, you should have gone to Williams and Carlos should be the one at Mercedes. But Toto obviously knows what he's doing, and other people saw it too. But even just to actually get the results on paper and Mercedes and McLaren are drawing in the constructors right now.
It's a very good point. Obviously, you had that penalty that came in for an unsafe release, which actually nobody caught an actual visual of, but it was then reinstated. So obviously, the wrong decision to award him a penalty. I guess I could make it a hat trick, but I'm going to be awkward. Do you know what? I'll go for a bit of balance in this. I could go Antonelli because Antonelli has done fantastic, and there's only 3 drivers that had a better debut at Melbourne: Hamilton, Jack Villeneuve, and the mighty Kevin Magnussen. So I'm gonna go for Lando simply because I think it was a race where he's crumbled in the past at the start, the race start. I'm on pole. Can I keep the lead? He kept the lead. He did more than keep the lead. Yes, the team orders could have played a part, but we'll never know. We'll never know because Piastri did make a mistake as soon as he said we're allowed to race. So you've got to factor that into it. Do I think it's the greatest wet race ever from a driver? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a great drive? Yes, and it's allowed to be both, which is the main key. But that rounds off this very first episode of the F1 Journal podcast. It has been a long time coming, but we hope you like the concept. We will be back on Thursday for for the preview of the Chinese Grand Prix, the first sprint weekend of the season. But thank you to Glenn and Annie for joining me. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
See you guys.